So this is just going to be a quick lecture on trying to understand why we're getting this weird glitch here when we move from the right of this first spawn point. Now, let's dive straight into this one without an introduction. The idea here is that something must be going wrong with the collisions. Collisions being those simplified meshes around the world that allow us to do physical calculations, basically what can we stand on, what can we not, because they're often simplifications of the meshes that we can actually see for performance reasons. So how do we see what the collision world looks like? Well, fortunately in our viewport, we can go to the lit mode, the button that by default says lit at the top left. And you can see there's different view modes here. Some of them are things like unlit, removes the lighting. You can see the wireframes of the meshes. But the one we're interested in is either the player collision or the visibility collision. Now, the difference being that the visibility collision is the more fine-grained meshes, and the player collision is that coarser grain mesh, and you can kind of see the difference there. I think that's quite obvious. When you click between the two, you can see the coarse grain and fine grain nature of things. But if we move over here from this particular angle, you can see that there is a mesh just poking through here, a collision mesh that we do not want. Where is that coming from? Looks like an error in our asset pack. If we click on it, you can see it says Floor Filler 27. Not very helpful, that's the name of the actor. But if we go and have a look at its static mesh component, in the details pane, and have a look at its actual static mesh, we've got the SM Stairs A1. Now, if we browse to this asset using the little magnifying glass and open it up, then we're going to get the static mesh editor opened up in Unreal. And what we're interested in is having a look at collisions. So to see collisions, you go to this collisions button, and you can click on both the simple and complex collision. That shows you there's two different meshes here. The complex collision is for when we're doing finer grain physics and is often the same as the visible mesh. And then there's the simple collision, which is just a kind of coarser grain version, as we've been saying. And you can kind of see that difference there. That's a nice coarse grain mesh. And what happens if we have a look, if we've got this coarse grain simple collision selected and go below the floor, is you can see there's this massive strand going off down there into the distance. That must be what was causing us our collision issues. A little bit of an error in the asset pack. Few ways that we could deal with this. One might be if you go to the collision menu, you can remove collision, which is entirely removing collisions. You can then regenerate it using a bunch of different options that are built into Unreal, such as you could add a sphere for simplified collision, a capsule box, 10 DOP, 26 DOP, lots of different options here. Auto convex collision. We're not going to do any of that because actually we can fix this up pretty straightforwardly. Oh yeah, one more option would be that we could set the complex collision as the simple collision. There's an option for that in the details pane, but we're not going to go down any of those routes because actually you can do a little bit of coarse grain mesh editing right here. At least we can delete some vertices. So if we go ahead and select it while the collision mesh, simple collision mesh is visible, you can select this set of edges or the face that goes all the way down here, and you can see that's all that's selected. That's the only thing that's changed to a lighter green color. That's how you can tell. And if we hit delete, then you can see that goes away, and it doesn't actually affect the rest of the mesh. The rest of the mesh is pretty solid, still looks pretty much as we would want it to look. And if we go even in this viewport, we can go over to the player collision view, and you can see what that mesh looks like. It's a little bit funny in places, but it will work. So if we go back to lit and then go over into the sandbox, you can see now that little shard has disappeared from our player collisions. Can go back into lit and hit play. And now if I go over to the right and move around here, there are no collision errors whatsoever. And because we modified that stair mesh, let's go down the hallway and try going up and down the stairs. Yep, the collisions there still seem to be functional. I'm not dropping through the floor or anything. I'm able to go up them, and it's not a kind of discontinuous jerky motion. So our stair mesh is now fixed, and you've learned as a result of it a little bit about how collisions are set up against static meshes in Unreal. The next lecture, we're going to be going back to animations and understanding the animation blueprint to create much more complicated animation behaviors. I will see you there.